Drew is in
Yeah.
Chicago for a wedding,
Oh, okay.
so he's online.
That's what I thought. Go-
Greetings. From the Windy City, hello. Can you guys hear me? I can't hear you.
There it is. There it went on.
Now,
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Hey, all right. I'll call the DMAP meeting for November 12th to order. Welcome, everyone. I'm Neil Bryant, the facilitator and chair. And today Drew is joining us from Chicago, where he's attending a wedding. So he's on Zoom and can hear what we say, and of course offer his comments as we go through this. This is a three-step process. We're the DMAC. There's 7 appointed representatives by the Deschutes County Commissioners, and they're all volunteers and been working hard for several weeks now. The next process after the DMAP completes its responsibilities will go back to the Deschutes County Commissioners, who review the report and the maps that are proposed by the DMAC. They'll make a decision on whether or not to make any changes or whether or not to refer this to the voters in May 2026. And that's when the voters will have the opportunity to voice their opinion through the ballot box. So the first step, we have criteria that the county has given us, and that includes that we'll have, as nearly as practicable, contiguous precincts using existing precinct lines. Will not unreasonably divide communities of common interest or geographic boundaries. Will consider current growth patterns, including building permits, EGB expansions. No district shall be drawn for the purpose of favoring a political party or incumbent. And of course, the county commission is nonpartisan as far as when they're on the ballot. No district shall be drawn for the purpose of diluting voting strength of any language or ethnic minority. And on population, we looked to the 2020 census and also voter registration. And the current voter registration is, as I said, is current. And then the maps will be drawn to be approximately equal in proportion to size, population size rather, and with a 10% variance between the largest and the smallest. And the map will have 5 districts, so there wouldn't be any voting at large once the maps were approved. And that's another quality here, and the candidates would need to reside in those districts. So that's our obligation, which we've been trying to fulfill diligently for the past few weeks. Is there anyone signed up for public comment? Is there anyone in the audience that hasn't filled out the form that would like to?
And can you do the raise your hand?
And if you're online, if you would raise your hand so we can recognize you. No one online. Okay.
No one online raising their hand.
All right. Thank you. Approval of the November 5th minutes. They're in your packet. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Yes, Carol.
I have a correction to the second to the last page where it said the
failed 4-3, and you did not include our names in that one, but you did further down the list. Was it?
Well, yeah, if,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be talking into the mic.
it's okay, if you want me to include it in the summary, so it said it was just as part of the summary, so it could show where it happened in that conversation. But at the bottom of that, where I specifically mentioned the motions and the actual vote, that's where everyone was listed. So if you want me to list it.
Do that to be two different motions, so, okay.
No, we just had officially, apart from the minutes, the one motion. There was other discussions and agreed upon things, but yeah, that motion that was in the summary, I left it in there so so everyone could see where that conversation happened. It was kind of throughout. And then I put specifically what I've been doing for all the meeting minutes is putting the exact motions at the bottom, so it's very clear. But if you want me to include the vote count in the summary part too, I can do that.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Any other corrections or amendments to the minute? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve. A second? Second, thank you. All those discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Pose same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, and Dave has joined us now for questions concerning two statutes, but primarily 188.010. And probably would it be best if Dave came to the microphone? If I were in law school right now, the questions that were asked, these are fascinating questions for young attorneys. But thank you for being here. At the conclusion of our meeting last time, the questions were asked and we gave some information to Dave to ask for a legal opinion. That's been included in your packet dated November 6, 2025. But the first question was, is the DMAC mandated to review and consider political party registrations when drawing district lines? And the answer was no. Is there questions and discussion that the committee would like to have with Dave concerning that? Melanie?
Yeah, Dave, in your memo, you said the decision would be subject to strict scrutiny. Can you explain what strict scrutiny is?
As best I can, yeah, it's a higher level of scrutiny by the court that would require a real compelling governmental interest in why that information might have been utilized to help draw the lines. So it's a very high standard to meet. So generally, I won't say impossible, but very challenging to meet that standard. So
And specifically, you need to have a compelling government interest and the solution needs to be narrowly tailored and the least restrictive means possible for that problem, right?
correct, yes, sir. Hit it on the head.
So what evidence, if someone challenges these maps, would we have to show that we did not draw them for the purpose of favoring a political party if we don't look at any information at all about political party as part of this process? What kind of, if you were to defend these maps, what kind of evidence would you rely on?
It'd be easier to defend them with not looking at the party affiliations. But obviously, if the party affiliations are going to be considered, but then not utilized to favor one group or the other, it's just going to come down to being able to factually articulate that based on the deliberations and the discussions of the group and what the committee comes up with. People can always say, yeah, sure, I don't buy that. And that's why I think the safest route is to not consider it. Just because then you don't have to prove essentially a negative. People can imply all they want. And maybe that's ship's already sailed, right? You know, you individually could have all had access to that information. I suspect that whether your vote ultimately is motivated by favoring one party or one candidate or another is who knows? I'm not saying that type of a challenge would be necessarily successful. But you know, as lawyers, we don't want to procedurally create, you know, issues that can tie things up. And I tend to see it as a procedural issue as well. If someone wants to challenge what you folks come out with, that, hey, wait a minute, you favored one group or another based on political registrations. And And I conclude that because you consider political registrations. So what relevance is political party registrations if you're not gonna be considering it to favor or disfavor somebody? I mean, that's gonna be the argument. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, yeah, there's a ton of relevance. One could argue for reviewing that stuff. I get it. But, you know, I didn't write 188.010, but the folks that wrote it, you know, made it very clear that whatever it is you consider, you can't utilize it to favor any political party, incumbent legislator, or person. So, I mean, that's the answer I gave on the written memo was, you know, very succinct. It was a couple sentences, but it's the best I can give you.
Yeah, just one follow-up, because in the same statute, our other provision, not drawing for the purpose of diluting the voting strength of any language or ethnic minority group, we have looked at that data. We have considered it and deliberated on it. So have we opened ourselves now to legal challenge there? Should we have not even looked at that?
And again, I mean, those are the operative terms, right? For the purpose of diluting, and then the other one for the purpose of favoring. And I'm comfortable you folks are all good, decent people. You're gonna say, I didn't do it for the purpose of disfavoring or the purpose of diluting. I did it because it made sense in the full body of information I wanted to consider and coming up with what I thought were the most reasonable and fair maps, recognizing on there, we're gonna come up with a version that everybody agrees with or everybody's happy with. That's just kind of part and parcel of drawing district lines, period. No one's ever 100% happy, right? So you guys had a task that was probably impossible to begin with. You've done the best you can. So, but yeah, those are the operative terms. I mean, did you do it for the purpose of favoring or disfavoring or benefiting or not benefiting? And I'm comfortable, you're all gonna say under oath, no, I didn't. I was just trying to be fair and reasonable. You know, somebody in a black robe will ultimately decide that if it were to be challenged in that process.
Matt, you had a question?
Sure. So short version, as county's council, it sounds like you would not advise us to take a look at it or consider it as part of our deliberations.
In a purely legal, procedural type of review, yeah, I'd probably be the one to have my client engaged in reviewing that type of stuff. Not because I don't trust or respect my client and what they're gonna do with it, but because it just opens the door to yet another avenue for someone to challenge it, which, you know, your charge was to come up with some maps that the commissioners ultimately push to the ballot and the voters decide whether they want them or not. And so staff wants to, I think, make sure you get there as quickly and cleanly as possible to limit the challenges that might come forward. And considering that data is just another avenue of challenge. It's probably not the only one, and as the mayor indicated, you folks have already decided or reviewed some other type of information that could form the basis of someone, you know, raising holy heck and saying you shouldn't have done that. And that's, I think, just the risk of this type of a task that you folks have been charged with. It's not an easy task. It's so politically charged that, you know, people can look at the exact same thing you do and have two different interpretations of it. And, you know, I mean, it's just the way it is, I guess.
Carol,
Technically, we haven't been mandated to do anything, so we've been given guidelines, and we've followed all the other guidelines, except we're saying, no, we don't want to look at this guideline. So does that open us up to questions about why did we not follow that guideline when we've gone down the list and followed all the others?
I suppose it does, but in the scheme of things, I think it's probably not one of the bigger concerns.
does the fact that the voter registration is a public record already, that individual members of the committee could look at this information if they chose to, does that have any impact?
It probably does. I don't know how much you've weighted, you know, again, it's good. If there's a challenge based on this, it's gonna be someone in a black robe deciding what they think. In terms of that, I will say, you know, at the time I've been involved in some challenges to ballot measures and whatnot over the years. I mean, the court does their best to try to get engaged in it as little as possible. And let the voters ultimately decide. So unless, certainly the ones I've been engaged with, you know, unless there's something that really looks amiss, you know, the courts try to, I think, keep out of it, at least locally here in the circuit courts here, and also the ones I dealt with over in the valley a couple times, they were try to stay out of it as best they can. Give a lot of credence to what you folks come up with.
Melanie.
Just to follow up on the case law that you said, and I didn't have time to look it up, are those all state legislative maps? And in those cases, was party affiliation considered in the creation of those maps?
They all are, yes, they were all state, and no, I don't believe party affiliation was considered, but it was addressed that it couldn't be. There were allegations in at least one of those cases where it had been a factor. And the court concluded that there wasn't, as I recall, that there wasn't evidence to establish that. But the takeaway was, don't consider party affiliation for the purpose of favoring one party over another when you're drawing, or in that case, redrawing district lines. And we're borrowing from redistricting and all this, right? Because there's not a whole body of case law out there to help us with initial districting, and it all really kind of comes redistricting law.
Melanie, did
So
you have a
just
question?
one thought. Is there a difference between looking at the numbers to make sure that it's fair and representative of what the county is? Is that favoring one political party over the other, or is it just trying to match the representative population of the county?
I think if I'm wearing the black robe, it's probably a reasonable, fair thing to do, but I'm not wearing the black robe, and I don't know what motive someone wearing the black robe might attribute. I know
Bill.
enough of you that I trust you're all gonna try and do the very best thing and do the right thing and let the voters ultimately decide, so. Like I say, if I were wearing the black robe, I'd say, hey, if this is what they push forward, I'm comfortable, whatever criteria they used was reasonable and fair, they're good people, they did this because they're civic minded and they wanted to, help out, and I get the heck out of the way as best I could, but, I'm not wearing a black robe, I'm wearing a gray sweatshirt.
Bill.
So I think what you asked, Melanie, the issue of, well, we look at to see if it's fair, that itself is not defined what's fair. So and that's why they put you're not to use it, use it for the purpose of drawing it. So by not looking at it, once you look at it, you're evaluating it, like was stated last meeting, we would look at it to see which map would be better. Well, that by itself would say that you're considering it if that changed the valuation of the two maps. The other thing I wondered about, Dave, is that all these statutes that say this are drawn for the purpose of partisan races. And this is a nonpartisan race where really party isn't part of it. I mean, it's not like in the legislative and congressional races. And I would think a court would factor that in somewhat. It's like, well, and there's more nonpartisan, the biggest group is nonpartisan. And
Not affiliated.
yeah, non-affiliates and independents is kind of a.
Perfect sense. Yeah, it makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. The cases, as I recall, were partisan measures, but, yeah, I mean, there's some logic to that. I totally track that. And it'd be certainly an argument that if we were defending the county, I'm sure it would be one of the arguments we would make would be, this is nonpartisan conditions.
Jen.
Sorry, just Drew's hand is up online, so Drew's waiting to be called on.
Oh, Drew wants to be called on. Okay. Drew, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
A little louder. Could you turn up your mic a little bit?
Oh, I'll see what I can do, or I'll just speak up a little bit. You guys are coming in pretty hot, so hopefully you can hear me now. Yeah?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. First of all, Dave, thank you so much for both your time today and for supplying us with that background before today's meeting. I guess a couple things real quick. I mean, there is cases coming at us left, right, and center. I don't know if you saw the one this week out of Utah. Did you happen to see the news about that just a day or two ago?
I did not.
Okay. Well, it's a situation where a court in Utah has thrown out a map there, and it seems to be, there seems to be one of these a week, or at least one a month, I guess, going on at the moment. But as you say, a lot of that's to do with redistricting rather than districting. I'm wondering how much the fact that this is ultimately going to be decided on by the voters somewhat inoculates us on legal challenges too. I suppose anybody could file a legal challenge at any point in time, but my thinking is, but tell me if this makes any sense or not, if there's any precedent is once this goes to the voters, and the voters presumably have had a full and frank discussion of this, it's out in the voters pamphlet, a campaign has been run and everything, they can make up their own minds. And once having been decided by the voters, I would have thought the courts are far less likely to intervene on something like this. But maybe I'm just, talking out of left field. Any thoughts about that?
I think you're spot on. I think when it gets through that political process, it's much more of a hands-off approach the courts would take.
And then David, isn't it true that since this is just an advisory committee, that if there's going to be a challenge, it wouldn't be a legal challenge, it wouldn't be to what the DMAP does, it'll wait until after the commissioners make their decision?
In theory, that's a great question, and we've been mulling it over, trying to figure out procedurally, what the opportunities or timelines for certain challenges might be, and that would logically make more sense to me, but then again, that might be limited to a ballot title challenge as opposed to like a full rate review type of challenge of a governmental action. You are a governing body for purposes of public meetings law, and you're making a recommendation to the county commissioners. But yeah, that again, you're anticipating some of our arguments. If a challenge came earlier than the commissioners taking action, we might be challenging, legally among others, that it's premature, that it's not right yet to really be before the courts. But we're all learning kind of on this as we go. I've been doing this county council stuff for 32 years. It's the first districting for county commissioner seats I've ever been associated with. It doesn't happen a whole heck of a lot. So typically it's associated with home rules, so it's a much more drawn out process when you have districts. I think Clackamas has 5, and that's not part of a home rule, but I'm not sure if there's another one. Steve would know probably best, but it doesn't happen a whole lot. So you guys are doing something pretty unique. You're definitely a unicorn.
Other questions for Dave? Drew, do you have any other questions? No.
Well, folks, thanks for all you're doing.
Thank you for helping us.
Yeah, thank you, Dave.
Next, and including your packet, is some building permit information going year by year. And I think this is helpful in response to the commissioner's requests. And it was, I understand it, all 3 that said for the committee to take a look at where the growth might be coming from. We have several precincts where they're basically built out and the building permits are pretty slow. And then you have others where you can see more permits being issued. And I note in precinct 33 that in 2020 it was 100, in 2025 it's 300. So just pointing that out. But discussion, comments concerning the new information on building permits. Yes, Phil.
Well, I'll make a couple notes. One of the things we'd wondered about was Redmond, and by now having their complete data, there's been a lot more growth than it's more in line with what I expected, and it's significantly more. I mean, in precinct, the first one's 17. I think that it had been called. We'd only seen 219 permits and 17 on the previous list, but if you look at 17 now, you've got, I think it's over 600. So it definitely is showing that by having the breakouts between permits and units is important. The other thing I will notice about like 30, that there are still I think it's hard to tell which ones always are growing the most, because some of them, like 11 now, this last year has 180 units, but only 5 permits. So it's obviously apartments or whatever is what I'm seeing there. And then even in 33, there's only 104 actual permits. So there must be some multifamily in that 300 number, or 200 of them units are multifamily. So it's kind of interesting to see. I really am glad we did the breakout, because I think you can, it does change it, like you're saying.
Yes. Melanie.
Do we have the multifamily numbers from Redmond in here? Okay,
Yep.
just making sure we
Yep.
have those.
Other comments or questions?
This mic is terrible. I'll just make one clarification for the Redmond. I think last week I said there was about 300 and there was actually 74 multifamily permits for a total of just over 700 units. So, yeah.
Yes, Melanie.
I'll just reiterate my argument that 33 is where a lot of the growth is going to be happening in Bend happening right now. And then that's going to be part of my consideration on those.
Yeah, I guess
Bill.
I'll make the other comment that I had seen somewhat last time, but it's more confirmed, I think now even, is that the ones with the most growth on map C, the 3 districts with the most growth are the ones with the lowest voter registration now. So they may catch up with the 2 that have the higher. So we should see an equalization somewhat within voters if this built out this way. Of course, any of this could stop in an instant like we've seen at other times. So we don't really know if it's going to keep growing the way it has been, but.
Melanie.
So Bill, on map C, District C includes precinct 33, and it is the district with the most voters.
Yeah, I see that. But if you go through precincts on the east, I
Excuse
didn't
me,
ask for
Bill, yeah.
If you look at the East Bend precincts, there's been a lot of growth in them, and I didn't total up for just this next year, but some of them have as much or more than 33. So I don't know if they'll keep growing. There's certainly some big projects on the east side. So so if 33 wasn't in the east side, there's still a lot of growth coming in the east side. And without 33, there was a lot of numbers, and so I don't think it's as big a factor.
Okay. Any other comments? Does anyone want to offer a new map? If not, then we're having a discussion about B and C, and I'd like to suggest maybe that before someone makes a motion of any kind, that we just have a general discussion from each of the members about which of the 2 maps they favor and why, to make sure that everyone has a fair chance to comment on this. And I'd like to start with Drew, and I see he's got his hand up again because I always worry about technology and suddenly not having someone available. So if that's all right with the committee, I'll ask Drew to speak up.
Thanks, Neil. Before we get into discussing B and C, I just wanted to ask real quick. With today's packet, we got a map from Commissioner Chang from 2006, and there wasn't a lot of context there for me. So I thought, for the record, for the public, it'd be interesting to know exactly what that is in reference to, because I'm not entirely clear, and I didn't go back and do a Google search on this. Was this something that had been submitted before voters? Can Jen or somebody illuminate that particular subject before we go any further?
I can offer a little and then I'll go to staff. In 2006, we voted on what I call a home rule charter for the county, and it was brought up by a committee. I think Ed Fitch from Redmond was the person who did it. And I don't know who was made up of the group that proposed it, but we voted as a county whether or not to do have 5 commissioners, have zones, whether or not to elect the sheriff or any other county officials. It was, and I don't remember the specifics of it very well. I don't remember what information they used in 2006 to come up with the districts, but as Commissioner Chang pointed out, apparently they split precincts. Did they do that with the help of the county clerk? I don't know that either, but I'll turn to Nick and Jan. Do you have any additional information on this? Okay. And Phil, I don't think you were on the commission then.
No, I wasn't.
Does anyone here have a recent memory on the 2006 vote? Okay, so is that helpful to you?
Well, yeah, a little bit. I mean, it was just interesting how that showed up in the middle of this process. And I thought, at least in the interest of whatever public are are tuning in and following our proceedings, it might be good for them to know as well. So presumably, yeah, you're the one old timer here, Neil, who can shed some light on it. So thanks. But
It
presumably
was not brought on by the county commission. It was a citizens group that put it on the ballot. Is my
right, and it
recollection.
was an entire package of things from the way you're describing it. So it wasn't just the map, the home rule thing. It was five commissioners. It was the whole deal.
Yep.
Okay.
And just for further note, that was measure 9-43, November of 2006. I don't have the exact precinct results or the election results, but I do know that it failed. But as Drew alluded to, it was the whole kit and caboodle. It was the expansion to 5. It was changing the nonpartisan in a home rule charter. But yeah, that was the maps that was the map that was referenced by Commissioner Chang.
Thanks, Steve. Bill.
Yeah, I'll say one thing I do recall, because I went back and read all the statements about it and looked at it. There was kind of drawn also new responsibilities for the commissioners. It was a big part of why they were doing it. They were reducing the role from a full-time to part-time or part pay, partial pay comparatively. It was a whole restructuring that way as well. The other thing that was true, that the map itself doesn't work very well, I think, is just the population was so much less than that. It wouldn't really guide us very much, I don't think. I think it's been such an expansion in different parts, but
Melanie.
Yeah, I mean, I went through the voter pamphlet too, and I saw that actually a member of this panel weighed in at that time. So I'd love to hear from Mr. Cyrus. He had written, instead of having 3 commissioners interested in responsible for your welfare, you would only have 1. And it's unrealistic to think a part-time commissioner from the other end of the county would have much interest in dealing with your issues and concerns. And also some comments around, Bend would have 2 commissioners, but we already have a city government. So I think that was the attitude from some folks at the time. And I think now we're here. So it'd be good to know what's the difference now. I mean, it's hard to translate that map exactly because it's so long ago and the precincts are different and they split precinct lines and they've done some stuff that we didn't do. But I think there was some of the same motivations and we're hearing different things now. So I think it is important to kind of look at what happened then and consider how voters are going to think about what we're doing right now too.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Is it okay if we have just a general discussion and I'll call on each commissioner to give their thoughts on map B and C? And I'd like to begin with Drew, as I said, because I just don't want to lose you as through technology. Go ahead, Drew.
Well, thank you, Neil. Yeah, I am still at a place where I am, I guess, open to arguments for either map today, and I'm going to listen intently to what the rest of the committee has to say. I think I mentioned at the last meeting, I don't want to be flippant about it when saying it's almost a coin flip for me, but I do see the pros and cons on both of these maps. And in fact, I think it's going to come down largely to where you sit on that map and in those particular handful of precincts that we've talked about that are differing between the two, how you view this whole thing. And so I'd kind of hoped that, we'd have a little more public comment pursuant to those particular areas. But yeah, at this point, I have my reservations about both, put it that way. I would not say that I'm wildly enthusiastic about either map. By the same token, I think either kind of checks the box for what we've been asked to do, particularly after today's legal opinion, which seems to suggest that we are better off not looking at party registration at all. So yeah, I guess at this point I don't have any huge comments to make, Neil, other than I really am interested to listen, and maybe I will have some comments or questions of the other committee members as we go along here.
Okay, thank you, Drew. Carol, I'll begin with you.
I knew that was going to happen. All right. I'm still favoring map B for a variety of reasons. I think that 33 needs to stay in with the purple group because I think they are communities of common interest and geographic boundaries. I also, on map C, I never liked the fact that we split 2 and 25 because that is the Hispanic population, the majority in Bend. And that is one of our directives, was not to do that. So for those reasons, I'm still sticking with B, unless somebody can convince me why I should be for C.
Thank you. Melanie?
I agree with Carol, and I do want to say I have some real concerns about this committee voting to not look at information that it will allow us to assess whether these are fair maps when it comes to the number of voters in each district and their affiliations. I'm very concerned that that is going to undermine public trust in this process. We've already seen comments come into our inbox that it has. And this process has been so quick with, I would say, unfortunately, not very little public engagement on the wider scale for a county of 200,000 people, that without full transparency, I think it's going to be very hard to convince voters that this is the right solution for Deschutes County. And I still continue also to have reservations about the fact we weren't allowed to consider other options, to spend more time asking the public what it is they want or what they think would be best. And instead we're here, as Phil said at one meeting, to do the commissioner's bidding. I think that undermines this process as far as building public trust. So I'm in basically the same spot as Carol, but also as Drew, and then I have reservations about both maps. And I think we've got one meeting left. I think to make major changes now would be difficult. So I think the majority of the committee wants to move forward, probably with one of these maps. So it's probably in our best interest to move the process forward at this point and let it play out with the commissioners. But I'm just going to put those reservations on the record with how this process has played out. I think it's going to be hard to win public trust and help people understand the why behind this districting process.
Thank you. Bill?
Well, to me, I like the way we started the process, and the most obvious way, and I thought it was due to good leadership to start with the Redmond area, because one of the, it's real clear that we built from the guidelines from the Secretary of State's office are it's to the maximum extent practicable comply with these criteria. And the first one's utilizing existing geographic and political boundaries and maintain county lines and cities within a single district. So it was obvious that the Redmond area was a starting point there. We've successfully maintained the cities within single districts, except when we got to Bend. And I think we've done a good job of keeping as much of Bend united as it could, which is the first criteria. It came out that in terms of the numbers, we'd have to take some precincts out of Bend to make enough numbers to match the goal on the population or voter registration. And we 20 ended up going with North County for the reasons we talked about, and that's been accepted. And so it came down really to me that really it was something from the south end or west side, and it was just really what's the most practical. And although from my perspective, if there wasn't a numbers thing, you could have boundaries that included all of the East Bend in it, but it would make it such the voting power of the people in that district be diluted because they have more voters per district. So it's not anything really new, but as we've talked about at prior meetings, it was just which one of the precincts as you go across the south and somewhat the west side would work. And if you take 33 out of it and you left 2 in South County, you're below the threshold on the numbers that we're trying to achieve. And if you left 33 in and took 2 out, that wouldn't work either, because it still would be below or very low. And those 2 to me were if you look at the map, you can see the urban growth boundary, and 33 is the one with half of the precinct is not in the city of Bend. All the rest of the ones that are in the city of Bend are, except for 8, which is unique in itself, because the problem there is that there's really no more population going to go in that because it's completely developed out. So and it's less than I think 1,000 voters or something. So it really doesn't move in terms of the percentages. So I thought it was important to meet the criteria of urban neighborhoods and rural communities, and other communities can be identified. And I think we've done a good job with it on C. I've spoken before that on B, to reach all the way into the center of Bend in precinct 47 and 5, which is completely developed and really has a border there, it didn't make as much sense as what we have in C. So, and then 12 to me was completely, in the words of this, is more of a rural area, rural community, and tying it into East Bend with all the urban neighborhoods didn't make sense to me with B. So, but those aren't really new deals. I also want to say that the issue of trust in the process is if the process was set up by other people, the public will decide whether the process was good. Our job is to meet these criteria, and I think we've done a really excellent job given it. And we're fortunate that we have these geographic areas that are severable or separable, and we can set them up fairly. So,
Thank you. Bernie.
Okay, I'm just going, my whole criteria has been by the numbers and math, and the areas with the most, looks like the most probable growth is set up the Redmond area and maybe even in the South County by going by the permits and everything that we have. They're asking us to foretell the future, basically, what's going to happen. I mean, who knows? We could have a big boom in the north. We could have a big boom in the south. We could have a recession. Who knows? So, but right now, my opinion is that map C is the closest that we're going to get to whatever we can do. We never did get a good answer on what areas of common interest are. I mean, like I said, there's 24 definitions of common interest, which means there is no common interest except for you either live in the city or you live out of the city. And that doesn't mean that much. You might be, a yoga instructor living next to a guy who goes hunting all the time. So that doesn't mean a lot either. So map C is the closest we're going to get to what we can come up with by the criteria we've been given.
Thank you, Bernie. Matt.
Yeah, I actually, as I've mentioned a time or two before, I think map C comes the closest to meeting all of the criteria that we've been directed to. It does the best job of blocking out geographic areas and boundaries in the community of common interests. Divides the county into 5 geographic areas comprising North County, including Sisters, Redmond and its surrounding area, West Bend, East Bend, and South County, including Lapine. More specifically, map C groups precincts 5 and 47 with the adjacent communities with common streets, development patterns, and geographic locations. While precinct 8 is outside the UGB, it is made up of Tetherow, which is adjacent to and similar to the Broken Top development in precinct 47. Precinct 25 matches the development patterns of the rest of the East Bend district and is predominantly east of Highway 97, which creates a natural divide between East and West Bend. Precinct 12 is a natural fit for the North County district because it has both rural development patterns and is outside the UGB. It also helps maintain the Hispanic community common to adjacent precincts 12 and 20. Precincts 2 and 33 are the most difficult ones to place because of the proximity to Bend and the UGB lines. However, to balance population, part of Bend had to go somewhere and be included in other district. These 2 precincts made the most sense because they are adjacent to the South County district, have similar development patterns for the most part, share an African American community of interest with precincts 33 and 43, and precinct 2 also maintains a common Native American community of interest with precincts 42 and 43. It should also be noted that if you look at the permits as far as likely growth for 2025, the East Bend the East Bend precinct with this alignment has more permits than the South County with 33 included in it. So in fact, the concern about having 33 in the South County is negated by the fact that there are actually more permits already in the East Bend portion, so it would offset that. The other thing, if we look at the population numbers, the map C has a 7.4% variance from the highest to the lowest, well within our 10% range. So, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Ned?
Thank you. I kind of kept my focus on B and C, and I also have concerns about both maps. But I'm also concerned about every other map we've looked at. I don't think there's a way to make this perfect. And so I focus just on the two maps, and I have concerns on both. One on map B, my concern is having precinct 47 in South County, which is Touchmark and Mount Bachelor Village and the Bend Athletic Club inside the city. How is that possibly part of South County? And I think we're doing it just to manipulate or to make the numbers work. And I've always been one that's not as absolutely fixed on the numbers as maybe others are, but so 47 really bothers me. How can that possibly be a community of interest with South County? Because it's part of Bend and it's surrounded by Bend. Precinct 33 is partially in the city and out of the city. I understand the argument about its growth, but I'm concerned that I don't know how we predict what the growth is or what the future is. I mean, yeah, you can look at building permits, but if you look at the rest of Oregon, Oregon is not growing for a lot of reasons that affect Central Oregon. So is it going to grow? I mean, Drew said that Neil was the only old timer, but he's not quite right. I've seen the growth go fast and I've seen it reverse since I've been here more than once. So I can't really focus on what might happen. So I can't, so map B doesn't work for me because of 47. And I don't have a problem leaving 33 in the city, but it just seems to me to relate more to map C than leaving 47 out of the city and out of the red area. So to me, 33 might grow a lot. I think personally, Lapine and Redmond will probably grow faster in the next decade than Bend will. Partly because one of my favorite things, Lapine now has sewers. It creates growth. Look what happened in Bend when we put sewers in. It explodes. And the same thing will happen in Lapine, in my opinion. Whether the locals like it or not, it happens. So I don't think there's any perfect map. I think we got to give it the best shot we got. I'm really in favor of what the attorney told us about not looking at political parties because I really don't want to have to prove that I didn't do anything illegal when I didn't do anything at all on it. So it's hard to prove a negative. So I'm satisfied, and so I'm ready to vote.
But on your direction is map C.
I think map C is probably more representative than map B.
Okay. For the record, Ned is older than I am.
A lot older.
And Drew, so does this help you?
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Drew. Drew, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, first of all, my apologies to Ned. I did not mean to impugn his wisdom and long experience in Deschutes County.
Age, not wisdom.
By suggesting you were the only old timer up here, Neil, but you seem to be the old timer that had the greatest recollection of events going back a couple decades. So plaudits to you. It's just a couple of things. Having heard everybody's comments, and I think particularly appreciate Matt and Phil's kind of precinct by precinct breakdown and sort of justification for their support of map C. I would say that we've talked around this a little bit. I'm pretty adamant that our job is not to be projecting growth, even though we got a new set of numbers around those permits today. I don't think that's our job in the least. I think part of what we need to discuss again is in putting forward the recommendation we're going to make on a map is what I assume would be a recommendation to the county that this process be done again as soon as possible and plausible after the next census. But that kind of leads me into a second point, which, and I apologize that it didn't occur to me earlier. I might have asked Dave about this earlier, Council, because the whole question of the voter registration, I think it's kind of interesting. At the very least, it's an irony. At worst, I think it potentially helps someone suggest that we were being derelict in our duties. We made a decision weeks ago by vote of this committee that we were going to consider registered voter numbers versus actual population counts. And as has been pointed out several times, that makes this whole process a bit of an outlier. And again, I recognize we're dealing with mid-census or mid-decade population numbers. I take to a certain extent the fact that the voter registrations numbers are more current makes them more accurate, but it does mean that we are essentially creating this process using a different basis historically from what any other county in Oregon has done. My concern is we're saying we're looking at voter registration numbers, but we're saying, and I think trying to be almost clever by half, we're saying to ourselves, well, we'll look at the numbers, but we won't actually look at the affiliation or the party registration. I look at that and I say, that's sort of a willful, what's the word? Willful abrogation of responsibility. So I would like to put forward, before we vote on these maps again, I would like, for the record, for us to vote on the notion of whether we look at voter registration data. I know we, at the last meeting, said, and we agreed we would get council in to discuss this point. I don't believe we voted at the last meeting whether we would like to see voter registration data or not. I would like to put that on the docket right now. And I guess if I'm right about that, and we didn't vote on it last time, then I guess I would propose a motion that we still take a look at the voter registration data, because that to me is part and parcel with us saying we're using voter registration numbers versus population for this whole exercise.
Jen, we did vote on it, didn't we?
Yeah, I was just trying to look it up really quick. It might have been 2 meetings ago. There was an official vote on whether or not to look at partisanship. I believe I'm just.
My motion to have Lee bring us some bar charts to this meeting that we did last meeting. So I don't know if there's making a difference.
I made the motion to use this 4-3.
Yeah, I think that was it. Sorry, I'm just trying to.
And last meeting, there was a motion from Melanie.
Yeah, it was the last meeting. Yeah.
To use voter registration, and that failed 4-3.
Yep. So reflected in the meeting minutes, which is in page 5 of the packet. It's the very bottom of page 5, top
Okay.
of page 6. Melanie Keebler moved to request partisan voter registration, non-affiliated independent as one, Democrat and Republican shown in a bar graph for each district for both maps B and C. Carol seconded the motion, and then it failed on a 4-3 vote. Additionally, Drew requested to have legal counsel come in to clarify originally in the motion form, and then withdrew a motion and just had a recommendation that there was favor of the DMAC to have that. So there was an official motion for the legal counsel to come in, but there was an agreement by the DMAC to have legal counsel come in, but there was an official motion to look at party registration data, sorry.
So,
Okay.
so I guess if you want the DMAC to reconsider their prior motion on that, you could make that motion, but there was a vote on it, and it was 4-3 not to use the registration information.
Yeah, I would put it to the committee again for the reasons I just stated, and I think effectively I will admit to coming late to this notion, but I do think there's an inconsistency there that greatly concerns me. And even after listening to council today, I don't feel like we were given a sweeping recommendation that this, would keep us from any sort of challenge. And I would also point out, we have a note today in the packet from one of our public comments from, I think it's Steve Kelly, the gentleman from Sisters, who actually points out, without us having looked at it, pointing out that the maps seem to be favoring one party or another in each case. And so it's sort of out there in the public record. So with that in mind, I do think it behooves us to take a deeper look. I don't know if that takes us anywhere beyond where we are with the existing maps, but I would like to propose that we revisit that and move one more time. And if it's voted down a second time, I promise I will not raise it again.
All right, so Drew is moving that the committee look at party affiliation graphics for the districts under maps B and C. Is that correct, Drew?
Yes.
Reconsider.
And it's really a reconsideration from, is there a second to that? Melanie seconds. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Matt?
Yeah, I would just point out, I guess the question under Robert's rules, does each meeting start everything over, or do previous motions? A motion to reconsider actually requires somebody from the affirmative side or the winning side to actually make that motion. If it carries from meeting to meeting, if we start over from scratch at each meeting, then, so that's your call. This part of
And I didn't bring my Robert's Rules of Order today. I wish I would have. But it's how you make it is that normally if there's a motion and you want to reconsider, it needs to be from the prevailing side. That's what, but since we're going meeting for meeting and I don't have my book in front of me, I can't say what that decision, whether or not that would mean, Drew, you couldn't make the motion, but I'm not gonna, I didn't bring my book.
I guess my point is, it wouldn't be, if it's a motion to reconsider, it has to be from the prevailing side.
Right.
If you're going to accept it as just a new motion, then that's probably acceptable.
I'm going to accept it as a new motion since I don't have my book. Any further discussion on it? Yeah, Phil.
So I want to ask our fellow member, Drew. So all of us went through and said what we thought of the map, except you. We've all said it and you wanted to know if you're buried. And so now you're back to, well, the one thing that would maybe change your vote would be the reviewing the voter registration.
Well, there's nothing to change my vote yet because I haven't voted yet, Phil.
That's what I said. That's my point. We've all gone through and said what we thought
determining my-
in response to the chair. And you haven't said what you thought, and now you're asking to look at the registration. And I'm saying, is that going to be the determinative thing of which of the two maps you like?
No, there is no single determining factor here. We've got a list of things that we're looking at, and I think by and large we have done a pretty good job with what is a very loaded deck to deal with. So I'm simply saying I continue to believe we haven't done, I think to what Melanie was saying earlier, we've gone down the list of things that we were given, but we're saying, okay, we're better off ignoring this point as a way of showing that we're not considering it all. And that, I don't know, that's just not how I was raised, Phil, I guess, to put it mildly. And I look at the comments that we've been getting from so much of the public, generally negative, by the way. And then when I see what is a constructive comment from the gentleman of Sisters today about where the maps sit, that concerns me. I don't know if there is something we could be doing still if we get looking at that data, because I have not looked at that data in detail. But again, I find it weirdly inconsistent that we're saying we're going to consider the voter registration numbers as the basis for all of this, but not any of the affiliation involved. And I say that again, representing the largest block of voters clearly throughout the county, which are those not affiliated with either the Democratic or Republican Party. So, it's by no means would it be the determining factor for me. To be clear about that, it's not. There is no one determining factor. I think it's just another factor that we shouldn't be ignoring, I guess.
Matt.
Yeah, I'm still concerned about the language where it calls for the purpose of our decisions and whether or not we're utilizing that information. And if there's anybody here that would change their decision or their vote based on having that information, in my opinion, it weighs into the purpose of why we did it and opens up liability. And I mean, which was fully supported by county council when he basically said that he does not recommend that we dig into that and open that door. So I'm still firmly opposed to it.
Melanie.
So I agree with us taking a look at this. This should not be a surprise to anyone since I made the motion last time. And I think Carol, it was actually Carol that brought up the good point that we have looked at data and considered each of these things, and this is the one we're not looking at. And I don't think, as you put it, sort of willful abrogation, like I don't think just saying we didn't look at it doesn't mean there can't be someone acting up here for the purpose of one thing or the other. And I think if we don't look at it and talk about it and deliberate on it, what people will look at is the results of the map. And if people see an example like the Utah judge struck down today of a map that is out of whack with the balance of voters in this county, I don't know how people can support these maps. And Mr. Doyle said something today that I wrote down when Carol brought up, this is the one thing we're not really digging into. And he sort of said, I don't think that's one of the bigger concerns. And I respectfully disagree. Based on the comments that we are getting from the public, this is a concern. And instead of leaning back, hands off, I would recommend we lean in and have a real conversation and deliberate on it. And to do that, we need to look at the facts and the figures.
Ned.
And that's where I fall down on this.
Thank you. I kind of, I understand what Drew is saying. The purpose of why we're using data, and well, let me back up. What Melanie just said, that's the one thing we're not using. There's hundreds of things we're not using. The staff came up with many different things, data points and data that you could use, we didn't use. Using political parties as a determining factor, it was a purpose of why we're doing it. I agree with the comment about the purpose of why you're doing it. This, to me, is still, and maybe I don't live in the political world because I don't, but if you didn't do something and now you're trying to prove that you didn't do anything illegal or anything wrong, you're just going to create more confusion than you're going to create solutions. So we get to choose what data we want to use, and there's lots of data we didn't use. This is one of them. The other thing that I wanted to mention that relating to what Drew was saying, the map C and map B are the two maps that work both for voter registration and population. So to say that we're using only voter registration, and that's a reason to look at voter registration's political affiliation, doesn't connect to me. So I don't think we need to prove that we didn't do anything wrong. If you don't do anything wrong, let somebody prove that you did do something wrong. I mean, maybe I don't understand the political world because that's fact, but in my world, I can't prove a negative.
Carol.
The part I'm confused about is that there are more Democrats than there are Republicans, and there are more non-affiliated. So if our maps show that the districts have, let's not say that they've been drawn to show that they will have an advantage to the Republicans, but if you run the numbers and it shows that, then how do we convince the public that we didn't intentionally do it, even though we know we didn't do it, or some of us didn't do it, or what the purpose was? Because the numbers are going to show that. Does that make sense?
Bill.
I think that would make sense in a world where there was basically the whole political landscape was dominated by two parties. But in Deschutes County, it's over 40%, I think, are either non-affiliates, independents, or other party registrations. And so it's not dominated by the parties. They're both, in a way, minority parties. And so I think that's the first factor why I don't think it matters. because you can win with either party really. And that's been true if you look at the races. So I think that's a factor. The other is that this is specifically a nonpartisan race. So the candidates running, it's not on the ballot what party they're with. It doesn't have to be a criteria of anything. And so that's why I think it's a little different than it was in maybe what I'd call the older days, where there was people were pretty much, there was, I'll bet used to be 70% or more were in one party or the other. So.
Thank you. Melanie.
Steve, I have a question for you. Just to respond to your comments, Phil, I think it's a little politically naive to say that the parties don't really matter in these races. I think we both know that they do. But Steve, what rate do NAB voters vote at as far as turnout versus party affiliated voters?
I wish I had that in front of me. I don't have that in front of me.
Because to my knowledge, it's a much lower rate due to motor voter automatically registering people. You're seeing high turnouts, usually from party affiliated voters, less so from NAB.
It's probably a little bit more complicated too, as it would depend on the election. So this past May versus last November, but I could actually quickly pull that up.
I would love to have that information if we're going to use that as a basis to say we're not looking at registrations, because I want to be grounded in truth on how non-affiliated voters vote versus party affiliated vote. Party affiliated from all parties, to be clear.
Bernie.
I went on your website, Stephen, on the last county election, countywide, the turnout was 72%. So voter registration, I think I got the right numbers from here.
You're close. November was almost 80%.
Was it?
This past May was 32%.
20% of the voters don't. And I don't know what the percentage of people not everybody votes party line. I don't. A lot of people don't vote party line. A lot of people have gotten to the point they vote for what they think is best, no matter what party they're registered with. So I don't think the voting thing we know what the vote count is, and the two numbers match pretty close on map C. So if you got a 20% that don't vote, and we don't know how many people don't follow party lines, it's really not that much of a deal.
Other comments on the motion? Okay, the question's been called. Is there a second to calling the question?
Oh, Drew has his hand up.
Oh, the question. Okay, excuse me, my mistake.
Drew has his hand up.
Oh, Drew, yeah, and we were still on map B or C.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
you had your hand up too.
yeah, I did. I just want to follow up. I mean, Phil, I agree with you to a certain extent. I think both the fact that this is a nonpartisan race and the fact that Deschutes County is a very purple county. I don't think, and to Bernie's point, I don't think people, particularly in Deschutes County, are marking their ballot up and down one way or the other. I know it's interesting. Some places in the country, I don't think Oregon's ever had this. Some places in the country you can go, somebody may be familiar with this, you can check a box that said, I vote all Democrat or I vote all Republican. It saves you the trouble of having to go all the way down the ballot. You just check one box and you do that. To my knowledge, Oregon's never had that. So I think there's a certain independence here that certainly plays into this discussion. But again, I go back to Mr. Kelly's note to us and say, even if this doesn't represent a legal challenge, going back to what Carol and Melanie said, I think it presents a practical challenge for us and the commission if we put forward maps that immediately are going to draw scrutiny based on party affiliation. And the fact is, every other discussion and news article around the country, again, that's what this discussion is about. I don't know how we can suggest we were somehow beyond that. And again, I for the public record, I think it's kind of crazy for us to say, oh, no, let's just ignore it. That's the best way of handling it. And so that's why I'm suggesting what I'm suggesting, but I don't want to belabor this too much further. I know people want to get on with discussing the maps and everything. The motion's out there. So, if people are done talking about it, we can bring it to a vote again.
Okay. We'll bring it to a vote. Bernie just left for a moment. I'm sure he'll be right back, and we'll vote on the motion when he returns.
Can I have a process question while we're waiting?
Sure.
So it seems like today we're thinking about having a vote on the maps, and I just want to note, we have one more public meeting notice that people were expecting us to show up and meet at. We have not ever shown or created a timeline and when we are doing decision making on this body. And so I hope that we're not going to be premature today and that we're going to make sure we follow through with all of our public meetings so the public has a full opportunity to engage. I think we could maybe direct, if we get to this point, direct staff to bring us back an agenda that has a proposed motion on it and maybe some of those recommendations that we talked about before around, we recommend that we continue to district on the census schedule. But I just want to be really clear that we're not all done today with one more meeting on the books that the public was maybe hoping to attend, and that they weren't noticed that today was sort of the final decision being made on a recommendation.
On the process, that's determined by the group. And we do have another meeting that's scheduled that, and I think the way it was scheduled was if needed, we're going to meet one more time in November, but it's a decision of the group whether or not they want to move forward and make a decision today or whether or not they want to wait until the next meeting.
And Drew has his hand up again.
Bill.
Yeah, so first of all, we're not a standing committee. We're just an advisory committee on this issue to come up with a certain goal. So to me, it's a matter of at what point we've gotten the information that we thought was necessary to go through the guidelines and see if we can meet those, try to draw maps that done that. If a majority of people feel that they've done that by today, I'm fine with voting today. And I don't think we have any requirement to not vote today.
Drew, you have your hand up again. I want to, if you could concentrate on what the motion is and rather than the other things we just discussed, and Bernie is back.
Okay, well, let's deal with the motion. I'll come back. I had a follow up to what Melanie said in terms of process. So let's deal with the motion on the floor.
All right. Is everyone familiar with the motion? No. Okay. And the motion is from Drew, and it's for the group, the DMAC, to review the party affiliation graphics for district maps B and C, which include voter registration. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand at the same time.
All right.
Aye.
Okay, we have 3 votes for aye. Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, the motion fails. Now, Drew, do you have a decision on map B or C? Which one do you favor?
No, I would like to, kind of following on Melanie's point, I would like to suggest that we actually defer a vote on these 2 maps until next week's meeting. And in the interim, I would like to suggest, and if this needs to go in the form of a motion, we can do that. What I've been saying for a few weeks now, a few meetings, we have, again, 6 precincts differential between these 2 maps. I would like to suggest that the county, through some kind of a press release, some sort of public information request, something to get out to the public coming out of this meeting, that we actually solicit comments from the residents and the communities of interest, if you will, within precincts 2, 5, 12, 25, 33, and 47. I'd like to solicit comments from residents of those areas on these 2 maps. That will greatly illuminate which map I come down on. We've had general comments from folks now for weeks, but I don't think we've had something specific to those areas. And those are the people going to be most greatly affected by this. And I respect all the things, particularly that Phil and Matt had to say today about those particular areas, but I would love to hear from those folks, or at least give them one last opportunity to do so before we render a judgment, which I think should happen next week.
Melanie.
Yeah, I mean, that's along the lines of my suggestion. I think we can all kind of tell which way we're leaning up here today. I think it's very important that the public completely have notice of when our final decision will be made, so that they know when is their last chance to weigh in, to provide input to us. I I don't know about specifically targeting precincts, but I think making sure people know this is your last chance to weigh in. Please tell us what you think. Please look at these two maps, look at the differences between them, right? Let us know what you think. And I think, for instance, I wouldn't do each precinct because, for instance, I think people in precinct 20 might have some things to say about being in a precinct with Terrebonne and Sisters. I want everyone to weigh in. Maybe the people in Terrebonne have some ideas about that too. But having our meetings in the middle of the day has been tough to get people to show up. And I think if we're going to do a final decision on recommending a map to the commissioners, we should do that at a meeting that is noticed that we are making that decision at. That says how we notice our council meetings and our committee meetings. We say what the agenda items are. We say what the decision points are that are going to be made, so people know what we're doing and when is the time to weigh in. And we haven't really done that. Our agenda is very general. It just says discussion and map work. So if we're going to make a motion and a final decision, I think that should be noticed on the next agenda. I think we had this meeting scheduled anyway. So I think that that's what we should be doing to allow the public a full amount of time to weigh in. I don't know why we wouldn't. We're all marked it off on our schedules. Why don't we come back next week, make sure the public had a full opportunity and take that final vote?
Phil?
I just heartily disagree with this. We are not the city council. We're not the county commission. We are here to give the best advice we can give, having gone through all the criteria and everything else. And we've done a very thorough job. We're down to a point where 6 of the 7 of us have committed on these 2 maps. So you're saying, well, we'll get a bunch of advice or something from the communities and that'll change it all and we'll do this. I totally disagree with that. There'll be time for the county commission to do all that. There'll be time for the voters to do all that all the way up to May. There'll be plenty of time to air all the arguments you've raised in these meetings and any other ones you think of. But for now, if there's not anything more to consider as to these maps, these 2 maps have been in front of the voters really for a month. I mean, we've basically been talking about the same issues we've narrowed it down a little bit at the end, but people had an opportunity to come in, et cetera, but we aren't bound by lots of input to get to a map to propose to the public for the public to accept or not. And for people that don't like it, we get a lot of comments, people don't like it. They're going to have all the time in the world to oppose this and fight it or whatever they're going to do. But to keep spending our time to keep going through this, I don't think anything's going to change. So I'm very much against this.
Carol?
Early on, we had discussed that we were going to do a wrap up or give a directive or comments back to the county commissioners about how what our process was and maybe how they should proceed next time around. And I think that we need to have our final meeting to address that so that we all come to a consensus about what our experiences were and how they should go forward. I think that's what we had talked about at one time, that we were going to give them some kind of communication from us. And I'm not ready to go there yet because I don't have that wrapped around as to what I want to communicate to them.
Okay, well, the 2 recommendations we've discussed in the past, one is drawing for lots on the particular districts, and then the importance of using the census data from 2030 as they take a look at the maps that were involved. And okay, and I see Drew's hands up.
Go ahead and do Drew.
Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think Carol's raising one point I want to make. I just to be clear, Phil, this is one of the reasons why I'm suggesting we talk about just these precincts. I don't want the public to think that, I think we should be quite clear in saying, look, we are down to these 2 maps. We're not considering a 3rd map. We're not considering, creating big swaps and creating other options going forward. We have done our job for weeks, as you say, and we have narrowed down the options, and these are the 2 that we're looking at. If forced to vote today, I'll vote, or maybe I'll even choose to abstain at the end. But I think that would be kind of a cowardly outlook today. But I feel like for me to make a fully informed decision, I would just like to make that last appeal to voters in those particular areas, because I hear what you guys are saying, and frankly, I think those arguments are well considered. But I'm not hearing them directly from the people in those areas necessarily. So that's what would help me lean one direction or the other to your earlier point about what's going to be the determining factor. That to me is the determining factor at this point between the 2 maps. And like Carol, just said, and you mentioned, Neil, we've got those two other points to consider. I suppose we could have votes on all three of these things and be done. Like everybody else, I'm sure having a couple more hours on my Wednesday will be nice to have, but we have it blocked out, and so I'm prepared for that next week. I would just like full consideration by the voters involved in those areas. That's all.
Thank you, Drew. Matt?
Yeah, I move to accept a map C and forward it to the Board of Commissioners with our recommendation to put it forward.
Okay, we have a motion from Matt to adopt map C. Is there a second? A second from Bernie. Discussion on the motion.
Yeah, this is the second meeting where we've gone through pretty much the exact same arguments. I mean, we're getting to the point where we've beat this horse completely to death. And I don't think anybody here is going to change their positions. I mean, whether we do it this week, next week, or 6 weeks from now, I think we're pretty much, like I say, we've hashed out all the different arguments and looked at these maps every which way but Sunday. And like I say, I'm ready to go ahead and vote and move forward with other items of business that we've got to deal with.
Melanie?
I think an important part of public service is allowing the public to be heard. I think it will be an incredible disservice to the public to have noticed a meeting and said, this is our last meeting, at which people I think reasonably could have said, that's your last meeting, that's when you'll make your final decision. And then to suddenly not hold that meeting and to make this decision in a room of 3 public members and 1 reporter and whoever's watching online. So I am adamantly opposed to just wrapping it up today. What I would think would be best is if we give direction to staff to bring us a written recommendation. It could include recommending map C if that's the majority will of this body. Have that written up, have that noticed on the agenda, give the public time to read it, give us input, and then we make that final decision if that's the correct thing to do. We're not the city council, but we are acting in roles of public servants here. We have been tasked with an incredibly important job. And I do not understand the problem with a meeting that we have all blocked off time for and is still on the schedule that the commissioners have given us in time for them to make their decision on the timeline that they want to do it. What is the resistance to having one more meeting? Also to allow our committee members. I was not told today was our final decision. You know, I could still find more people to talk to Drew's point. I think it would be good to go to specific, and it would be really great, Matt, if you would listen when I'm talking, because I do listen when you talk. So
I've heard every word you said.
It's hard when you're talking to someone else also for me to speak. So that would be great if you would not do that. I just really think it's a disservice to the public to wrap it up today without notice. And I think part of public meetings law and part of public notice is to make sure the public understands and there's transparency about what's going on. And I've always had a problem, I've asked several times, to lay out a timeline for when we're doing what days are we narrowing down maps, when are we getting what data, right? And this process has been so ad hoc. I worry that the public is really having a hard time engaging on our decision making. And that, even if, you know, decision remains the same kind of as what it is today, allowing the public to be heard is how you build trust in the process. I think we were making a big mistake today. We just move forward, cancel our last meeting, and call it good. I think we have an opportunity here to help build that trust and to allow all of us to make a well-reasoned decision with as much input from the public as possible. I think that's our job. If we were just, you know, if the commissioners just wanted to know what we thought on a map, they could have asked us all individually, right? They put us in this public role for a reason, and part of that was public engagement. And I'm really opposed to not having our last meeting.
Matt?
Yeah, we have had a significant amount of allowance for public input. We increased our public input from 15 minutes to a half hour at the beginning of each meeting. We added a separate evening meeting for public input. The public has always been available to provide all the comments they want online. Today, we had a significant amount of public input when we started the meeting, as in 0. I think the public who is involved and interested in what we're doing has given us their input. I don't really see a reason to go out and publicize it anymore. I mean, this process has been in front of the public since the get-go. I really don't see a reason to delay it anymore. And I see no reason we can't meet next week to to talk about the other items that are on our agenda with regard to, there's probably going to be some debate in the process of how these districts are determined and how things are going to be done in the future. So, I'm not suggesting we cancel next week's meeting, but I think with regard to this topic, I don't see that, waiting for another meeting is going to solve any issues other than we spend the next meeting going through the same arguments that we've done for the last two.
Oh, Drew, hands up again.
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, just real quick. I mean, first of all, Matt, I know there's not many people. I can't see the camera panning, but I trust that it's true. There's nobody else in the room there again today. And I know we haven't had a huge amount of public in-person testimony the last couple of weeks. We had something like, 10 comments ahead of this meeting today, written comments. And all I would point out is one of the comments we've had repeatedly since the beginning of this process is that this is a rush process. So at the very least, I'm reacting against that by saying, let's make the process, be for the full length that we talked about, and let's reach that decision at the last meeting. So I think we're going to, even you have conceded you're willing to meet next week. So why don't we have the vote on the maps next week, along with the vote on whether we do lots to determine where the sitting commissioners are running and where what we recommend in terms of the future. And I agree, those two things may take up more of the debate. We could, if we want to say at the beginning of the next meeting, we're going to vote on these things straight away, I'm comfortable with that, but that gives us one more week to solicit a little more input. I may be the only person here who hasn't made up their mind. Okay. I see that, we've had all of you kind of giving your view, and I've been noticeably sitting on the sidelines of that. Maybe that's what makes me the independent co-chair of the Independent Party of Oregon, that I'm really looking at both sides a lot more than anybody else does. But my mind is not made up as of today. So if I cast a vote today, I may very well choose to simply abstain if we're voting on one map or the other, because I do not feel that we have done right by the voters in those 6 precincts in particular to give them one last opportunity to weigh in.
Okay, other comment on the motion? Phil?
So it's an interesting idea to try to get the comments from the 6 precincts that you refer to as being in play. And I've sat through a lot of public hearings on issues where the whole room here was full on county matters, et cetera. And there's things where you really do learn a lot of things about the precincts, or what the people think about an issue from different perspectives. In this one, I don't really see that exactly, because there's going to be people against each one of our decisions. There's going to be people in favor of each one of our decisions. And I can't even predict exactly how people are going to fall. But the fact is, that's how it's going to be, and it's all going to come down to a vote. So if we we change one precinct here, one precinct there, I don't think it's going to make that much difference in the final vote of the people in May. And there is going to be a lot of times for them to give input to the commissioners or in the matter. But I don't see how getting more input from people specifically about what they like or don't like about a map can really affect our vote. If we know what the precincts are, and we've talked about it, we've had a lot of perspective on the different precincts. It seems like we've already shared that. So I guess I think it's time that we do get this done. We've done a great public service, I think, by spending the time and researching. We've had great help from our county staff and the support, and to answer all the questions that we've gone into very thoroughly, I think. And so I still am in favor of finishing that today.
Other comments? Oh, Bernie.
Get my mind working here. Why you only want to use some precincts and not everybody? I mean, you leaving somebody out for a specific reason, or if you're going to get it from one precinct or 5 precincts, you should get it from all the precincts, their opinion. And if you read the comments that we get online, a lot of the comments are the people don't really understand what we're doing. I think they just want to complain about something.
Other comments?
True.
Drew's hands up.
Drew's raised his hand again.
Well, because I think Bernie was asking that question specifically of me, since I'm the one who's talking about the 6 precincts. Bernie, I'm not saying people from the whole county can't continue to comment. Of course, they're welcome to, but these are the folks directly affected between the 2 maps. That's why I'm most interested in them. That's why I've been saying this for about a month now, that since we've been largely weighing up these 2 particular maps now for several meetings, ultimately, it's those folks who are in the balance, because there's no difference for 44 of the 60 precincts. There's nothing to vote on between the 2 of them. We're basically voting about how it affects people in these 6 precincts. So that's why that takes some precedence for me. Of course, I'm happy to hear from anybody in the county. We've been hearing about it for months. And like I said, what I just said earlier is that a lot of people think this process is too rushed. So let's give them a little more time to make their complaints. And a lot of people do just like to complain. So, bring it on.
Okay,
I'll call the question.
call the question. Is there a second to call the question?
You didn't make a motion.
Oh, is that a motion to call the question?
I thought you made a motion.
Map C.
Correct.
Right.
I'm calling the question on that.
He's calling the question on that, which requires, you're not moving to end debate?
So there's a difference between if you say, I move previous question, it
Oh,
requires a second and a
I
vote.
guess I was.
If you just say, I call the question, it means you're ready to vote but it doesn't end debate.
Okay. Yeah, that's better, I guess. Thank you. If the chair agrees with you, I'll do it the way I'm supposed to.
You'd have to move the previous.
Okay, I'll move previous question.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Okay, all those in favor of moving the previous question signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, Ned, you didn't vote?
I did.
You did? Okay, I didn't see that. How did you vote?
Aye.
Aye, all right. Motion carries. Now we move on to the question itself, which is to recommend to the county commissioner vote C, map C. And there's no further discussion on that. So let's move to the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye
Aye.
and raise your hand too. All right. There you go. Thank you, Ned. All those opposed, same sign.
No.
And Drew votes no also. So the motion carries. Yes.
Nation. I'm voting no because I think it's incredible disservice to the people of this county to take this vote today, to not take it at our next meeting. I think we should give a full and fair opportunity for everyone to weigh in at the meetings that we publicly noticed. That is the main reason I am voting no today.
Thank you. So for the committee, pardon?
Drew has his hand.
Oh, Drew, your hand is up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to concur with what Melanie just said. I'm exactly in the same place she is at this point. I'm not saying that I wouldn't approve of map C, but I think we are being hasty in voting on these things today.
Okay, thank you, Drew. Bill,
I just want to make a comment. I think it's ludicrous to say that you voted no because you didn't get another meeting. 2 of, people had already committed that you were going to vote for B. That's what you said you preferred. So to say it now and act like you have the moral high ground because of it, I think is ludicrous.
I'm going to respond to that and I'll.
Melanie.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Well, there's,
Hold on, me and I have the floor.
no, point of order takes precedent over that. You should know as chair. My point of order is that we've had a motion. We don't have another particular agenda on the top or on the floor. And what we're having now is just open discussion and argument, which probably isn't, or you shouldn't be allowing.
We have 2 other items to discuss. One is, do we want to talk about the recommendations now, which would be drawn by lot, and the census recommendation to the commission? Those are the 2 things that remain on what we can discuss today. You can also put it off to the next meeting too. So let's my recommendation would do that rather than to respond to individual comments. But if you want to respond, I'll allow you to do that.
I
But
think the personal attacks are necessary. I think I've made it clear what I think about map C. I said I was leaning towards map B. I don't think your comment was correct, Phil, and I stand by my vote to not advance this today. Even if I was going to vote no because I don't like map C next week, I still have the right to explain that my vote was mostly based on the fact that this is rushed and we don't need to do it today. That's all. I think we should on the topic of recommendations, Neil, I think we should discuss those at the next meeting.
all right, let's move on to the recommendations. I have two that I've noted from the past. One deals with drawing lots for the individual maps, and the second one is a recommendation to the commission saying we have a census coming in 2030, and that should be reviewed carefully, and precincts, as Steve has mentioned, are going to change, et cetera, and the commission, any future commission, should take that into consideration as they review what has been done here. Those are the two that I've written down. Is there other things that the committee wants to recommend to the commission?
I'd like more time to think on that. I think we could talk about
Yeah.
that.
Sorry.
Carol?
I would like to see you write something, what you have just said, so that I can see what it is and then determine if there's anything else that I feel should be added to it. So I would like some time to think on that also.
Bill?
Well, I would move that we would make the recommendation to the commissioners that we do the voting by lot, or whatever you call it. Or maybe that's not the right way. I'm asking for help with the wording.
All right.
Districts by lot.
Districts by lot, so that you have five districts, there'd be five numbers placed in a hat or something, and they'd be drawn as far as the individual districts. And I was going to do it basically chronologically from A, B, C, and D, the maps we have now, and just go right down the line. That would be my recommendation. How to
Second
do
that.
that.
So moved. And
All right, we have a motion to do that. Is there a second?
I second it.
Second from Matt. Discussion on the motion. All right. Yes, Melanie.
I just continue to think that we should use the time we have to explain these things to more of the public who did not know we were making final decisions today because it wasn't noticed on our agenda. So I'll be voting no on the motion, not that I disagree with it, but just that we should be deciding this at our next meeting.
Other discussion. Drew. Drew.
I muted and then I unmuted and muted myself. Sorry. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I would agree with what Melanie's just said. I believe that what we ought to be doing today is asking staff, A, to promote the decision that's been made today of map C, B, explain that we are going to discuss, and I don't see anything changing the view of this committee around this, because the fairest way to do this is lots, but there may be people that have other ways or suggestions around the way that allocation should go forward. And the third point about how we do this going forward, the public might want to weigh in on that. So in the interest of completeness with respect to public input, I think it's worthwhile for the county to go out and say, the result of this meeting today was we have adopted map C for recommendation to the commissioners, and we're also going to discuss this next meeting, the allocation of the seats by district, and also future recommendations, and take public input on those things before we do that at the next meeting. That's what I would suggest.
I think it's a question. I don't know what you call it, but a point of order or whatever. Can't the county commission take or leave those particular proposals if they want to? We could recommend it today, and they could.
The county commission makes the decision. We're just making a recommendation of how we think the 5 districts should be labeled, but it's up to the county commission on that. Likewise, the same is true on the map. If they want to make changes on the map, if they want to have additional public hearings, the county commission can do that.
So then I have
Yes.
So if they have the ability to, it seemed like in our discussion, seemed like we had unanimous consent on the idea of doing this randomly, like you've suggested. So I don't know why we would need to ask the public whether they think it should be random or not. I just think unless it just doesn't get us very far, we'll hear there may be comments, but I don't think it's going to change our minds really, because it's been kind of advocated even by the clerk and et cetera as a fair way to do it. And then it seemed like the second issue we were going to discuss about looking at the numbers as soon as they could, or however you want to word it, after the next census. I think there'd been pretty much unanimous opinion on that too. And I think they would take that into advisement if they want to. They have the power to have hearings and have all the public testimony they want, but they don't really need us to hash it out first in that way. So I'd prefer.
Other comes Carol.
As far as giving them a directive or responding to how we want, how we have perceived this, I guess I would like to look at my very large stack of public comments and see if there's a common theme. One of the things that I remember is that people not only said that it was rushed, but on the makeup of this committee, and that maybe they should take that into consideration next time that it's more representative of the population of Deschutes County. So that would just be maybe one of my ideas, and they can accept it or not accept it. But I think there were a lot of comments about a variety of things that we are here to serve the public, and I want to make sure that their voice is heard, and maybe that's the only way that I can influence that.
Thank you. Other comments? Other discussion? Okay, the motion deals with having the 5 districts drawn by lot as far as numbers. As all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Ned, leave your eye. Okay, opposed, same sign, raise your hand. One. And Drew? Okay. Motion carries. The recommendation that we've discussed, and I think you're correct, everyone was kind of unanimous in that regard. You've got to look at the 2030 census, and one of the challenges we had were mid-census. So would someone like to make a motion on a recommendation to the county commission dealing with looking at the 2030 census and any census in the future as far as the districts?
So moved.
So moved by Ned. Second by Matt. Discussion? Melanie.
Again, pose this motion because I think we should be making this motion and having this discussion at our next meeting on November 19th.
Thank you. Yes, Drew.
Yeah, I think somehow in putting this particular recommendation forward, there's a lot of explaining needs to be done why we chose to ignore population this time around and simply put forward voter registration numbers. I mean, there's an inconsistency to that. And we're saying to them, yeah, next time just look at population, don't look at voter registration at all. And this time we said voter registration was the predominant thing. So I don't know. To me, there's some language around this whole thing. We can resolve it today, but it's oversimplifying the whole thing. And also to Carol's point, I do think there may be some other aspects of this that we really ought to be putting some further thought into if we are giving them a recommendation about how this process goes forward. It's not just, hey, do this again in 2032. I mean, we can do that, but I don't know that's saying very much. It's not very helpful.
Well, I think the motion isn't to not consider other information. It's just that with the triggering point of the 2030 census, it should be reviewed. And of course, voter registration and whatever else the commission wants to look at, they have the ability to do that, and they could appoint a new DMAC committee to do it. So it's not to the elimination of other information that the committee's seen or done. It's just an emphasis to the city or to the county commission that this is something that needs to be reviewed after the 2030 census is done. Drew, and then Ned.
So I'm sorry. So are we saying this is a motion just to say very simply, we think you should look at this again after the next census. That's all we're saying with this motion, and we're leaving it at
In fact,
that.
that's my understanding of the motion.
And we're not going to make any other further recommendations to the commission about how this be done going forward.
We can do that, but that's not this particular motion.
Okay.
If someone else wants to make other recommendations on how to proceed in the future, the committee can certainly make those recommendations on motion, second, et cetera. Ned?
I'd like to point out that we used the voter registration as a more accurate piece of data, but MAP-C covers both voter registration and population census data. It works for both groups, and it works for all the other criteria that we actually evaluated. So I object to just saying we are only using voter registration data. That's
Other
just a comment.
Other comment, Phil?
I think the other value of this to the commissioners is that there isn't in other legislation or legislative races and it's written into statute that you have to do it every 10 years or with the census. So we're trying to put that, I guess, foundation under this and ask them to try to put a foundation under it.
Correct. I think that's the purpose of the motion.
Got him down.
Ned?
Well, and it makes sense to me, since we're in midterm of census and everybody else does it on a census basis, to recommend they look at it again in the next census.
That's what the motion is.
Yes, that's what the motion is.
Other discussion?
I move the previous question.
Hold it.
I
Oh, Drew again.
also have staff clarification question too before
Okay.
you go.
Drew.
Yeah, I mean, I did not say we're only looking at voter registration information. That obviously we said we would consider population too, but this body took a vote over a month ago that it was going to prioritize voter registration data over population. And I would also go so far as to remind everybody, we've gone a long ways away from the original request, which was to try to keep the deviation between these districts down to under 5%, or as has been pointed out elsewhere in most other elected bodies, closer to 1%. That again speaks to the fact that this process was at best streamlined and at worst rushed. So yeah, I just want to make it clear. I don't think we haven't done a bang up job here. We kind of ticked the boxes the way we were supposed to do it, but I don't think that we can take a great deal of pride in it when we're talking about 10% differentials and maps that may have, a lot of flaws in them. Anyway, I just want to say that for the record. I did not suggest that we were only using voter registration data. I know we're looking at all those different things.
Melanie?
I make an amendment to the motion, and I propose that the motion instead say that we direct staff to bring us a draft written recommendation around doing this process on the census cycle for the committee to look at, debate, and give final approval to at our next meeting. So that way people have time to think about it. Carol has ideas.
Who made the motion again?
I think
Oh,
I made it
So-
using your wording.
okay.
I'm moving to amend Phil's motion.
So Phil, are you agreeable to that?
No.
No. Okay.
I think we need a second anyway.
And does anyone second? Melanie's?
Oh, I'll second her
Okay.
amended
We
motion.
have a motion and second.
Point of order.
Yes.
I think it changes the intent of the motion, which would be illegal.
Okay, I don't think it does. So I'm going to allow a vote on the motion.
I challenge the decision of the chair,
Okay.
which puts it to the vote of that body.
Yeah. All right, so the challenge of the chair's been made. All those who want to indicate that the chair's position on this is correct, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Question.
Yes.
Are your decision being that we're not talking about the amendment now, we're just talking about whether,
Amendment's appropriate for the motion that was made.
okay, and
So you're voting. So the challenge is to the chair. The chair said it's the motion is something that falls within the parameter of what the original motion was. And if the effect, if if you agree with the chair, you'd say no, that the motion is something that can be considered, then you vote on the motion. So that's what we're doing. So the initial is the challenge to the chair on my ruling. That is, it's an appropriate question.
I'm confused.
So a yes vote, just may I summarize, Neil?
Yeah.
If I may, a yes vote means you agree with Neil that we can at least vote on my amendment. A no vote means you don't agree with Neil and we should not vote on my amendment.
So it's not saying there's a favor of the amendment, it's the chair's ruling that we're voting on.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor of, I guess,
Agree
Pardon?
with you.
Holding.
upholding the chair and his motion, signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
1, 2, 3. All those against, same motion. So that fails. So now, since the ruling would be then, I've been overruled and the motion is not appropriate. So we go back then to the motion itself, dealing with the recommendation to the board. Yes, Jen.
Can we just get a clarification that that motion is if the maps pass in May? There could be a possibility that there won't be maps to look at in 2030. So I'm unclear is if the recommendation is there should be districting or redistricting in 2030, no matter if they're maps or not maps.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Yes, yeah, that was the intent of the motion, that it's if the election is favorable in May of 2026. Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Raise your hand, please. Nay, nay. Drew?
Yeah, I'm abstaining on this one.
Drew will abstain. All right. All right. Is there anything else that hasn't already been discussed that you want to bring before the commission before we adjourn? Yes, Melanie.
Meeting next week.
Well, that would be, I suspect that no, because I think we've completed the task of there, but we can have a motion to that effect. Yes, Jen.
Well, there was a motion voted in favor to assign lot numbers and
Oh, yeah, we have to
not been
complete the lot
assigned.
number.
So either next week or.
We could do that also right now, correct? We're prepared to do that? Nick?
I was uncertain if the motion and what was approved was to have it to approve that, but the board does it, or is it for this committee to do it? I would look to the committee. I was uncertain about the motion that was approved. Yes, to do by lot, but was it for this body or for the Board of County
Well, that's
Commissioners?
a good point. So the question is, do you want to draw the lots or just recommend to the commission to draw the lots? Yes, Phil.
Well, one, I'd be in favor of the commission drawing the lots, but I also thought there was a timing issue they needed to think about, or because if they do it now, then people would know what they're running for, but it was closer. So I'm fine not being part of that unless we're asked to do it.
The timing issue is deadline for filing is in March for candidates. So if the commission makes their decisions in December, including what district numbers are, then those candidates would have an opportunity to either stay in the race they've indicated they are, or they could switch to another thing. So there should be enough time to do that. And our voting of the recommendation and drawing the lots now, it would still go to the commission and they would have the right to change the process or not do it. But so our motion is that they should draw by lots. Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify, I was assuming that we would recommend they be done by lots, not necessarily that we recommend that we do the drawing, but I mean, I'm good either way.
Okay. I think we recommend they draw by lots.
Correct.
The way I would do it would be A, B, C, D, but that's up to them. And,
I agree.
okay. Melanie,
I just wanted to ask, when are you going to make those recommendations at what commissioner meeting so that I can give public comments as to what I wanted to say in the directive to the commissioners?
Jen,
Yeah, I'll take that. So it's a tiny bit unclear. I hope to have that decision by Monday or Tuesday of next week, if this is the last meeting. Potentially on the 24th of November, potentially on December 3rd. Other dates are under consideration too, but we don't have a set date. But I will definitely, as soon as it's set, notify every DMAC member, and it will be made public via media release.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, Melanie.
I move that we adjourn to a date and time certain of November 19th at 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. For this body to meet a final time to allow the public to give input into the decisions that we have made today that were not noticed as final decisions on our agenda. I'm going to be adjourned to that date, time, and cert.
Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Carol. Discussion? Matt?
Yeah, I object to this, or I oppose this motion specifically because we've already made our decisions. The comments going forward will be to the Board of Commissioners directly, not to this group. And especially that if we don't have other business to conduct, the motion requires us to be here from 1 o'clock to 3 p.m. 2 hours of sitting here twiddling our thumbs, potentially looking at each other without having any public to address or anything to do. It seems like a complete waste of both our time and a waste of money on behalf of the staff.
Other discussion?
Okay.
Yes, Melanie.
The motion to adjourn early at that meeting if we don't have public members here, but I think it's an incredible disservice to this county and this community what has happened here today. We have not given proper notice, and I want to talk about transparency because when you are doing something like this in the political environment we have right now, with map drawing happening across this country, to not have transparency on what you are doing is, I believe, is going to be a death knell for these maps. And I think that's really unfortunate because I think a lot of people have put a lot of time into bringing us information and helping us try to make a decision on this accelerated timeline. And I think we're not addressing public comments we've received about this process being rushed. We have not addressed public comments about people not understanding what we're doing. We have an opportunity to do that in a final meeting. We've also heard from committee members like Carol that there are more thoughts she might have, but without us even knowing that this was the final decision today, she did not have time to put them together. And how else are we? I think every member of this committee should have an opportunity to say what this process was like, to say, you know, why they supported the map they did or didn't, to have that incorporated into minutes that the commissioners can receive, that the public can see. And so what I'm seeing here today is, unfortunately, the way this has ended, it has shown that this process is not fully transparent, is not fully accessible to the public. I wish that it was, because without those things, I don't know that the public will trust this process or the map that has now been decided to be forwarded to the commissioners. I'm asking us to meet one more time. It is on our calendars. If no one shows up, I will make the motion to adjourn early, but I think we should stick with the schedule that we noticed to the public, and we should let them know what we have decided. And the public input we have here is gathered and accessible to our commissioners, and just one more point of data for them to consider when they make their final decision.
Bill?
Yeah, I'm opposed to having another meeting to take input on the decisions we've already made. I think there'll be an opportunity to do that in front of the county commissioners. And the big one's going to be, if it goes to the ballot, there'll be, months of time for people to do it at the ballot, which I fully expect people to come out in opposition to this. And I also think we've done a great public service by being as thorough and being as committed as we have. We're doing it every week at these meetings. I mean, we're not hired to do this. We're doing it as citizens. We've looked at a lot of data. The staff's done a tremendous job for us, and to say that we're not transparent is not true. It's all on the videos. You can watch them. The documents are available. It was, so but I object to going forward, or oppose going forward with another meeting that we don't really have a clear purpose for. I hope that people that have opinions will bring it out during the commission meetings and obviously during the elections, which I'm sure they will.
Drew?
Yeah, look, I said this earlier. I, as much as anybody, would love to have my 2 hours back next Wednesday. I've got a business to run, got other things going on. But I'm going to address the majority of the committee, if I can right now, the four of you who voted for Map C, and just say, I think you're missing an opportunity here by deciding to vacate our responsibilities a week early than what's outlined in the calendar of the community. You're missing an opportunity to effectively make the case for the map that you've just adopted. And I think that case has to be made. I think the public at large has been highly skeptical of this process. We've seen that all the way through this. And I'm not sure we've done a great job of addressing those concerns. And I've tried several times over the last several weeks to try to at least take some steps that would, you know, possibly give people the barest notion that this public service is being taken with them in mind. So I think you're missing an opportunity. I really do. And I worry that this whole process wound up being a Sisyphean task where we're, you know, pushing this rock uphill and it's just kept coming back down on us. And we have spent weeks on end doing something that is really not going to register and connect with voters because the case was never made. And I think if I'm you guys, the 4 people who voted for this, I would use this as a proactive opportunity next week to say to the public, well, here's why we got behind this map. Here's why it made sense versus map B. Because I don't think that's been done. And I think, you know, if we actually gave the public this last opportunity, it would be very useful. Instead, you know, it's easy enough to say, hey, we'll kick it down the road, give it back to the commissioners. They gave us this job to do. We've done it. Here, you know, you guys take the heat for it all. But I'm certainly prepared to spend however much time at the next meeting, whether it's 10 minutes or 2 hours, which we haven't done a 2-hour meeting this entire time. So I don't think it was the last 2 hours, but I think it would be interesting. And I personally would welcome the opportunity because I'm not convinced map C is the best map. You guys haven't made the case to me, which is why I didn't vote for it today. But after next week, if you made the case, maybe I'd feel differently.
Bernie.
Well, before we voted, we all stated why we liked map C or B, or we didn't like either one. And we've already stated that, and it's on record, right?
Yes, all except for Drew. He
Yeah, Drew
right.
Yeah.
Phil.
So just to respond to you, Drew, because we might not see you again, would you have said anything better about the map today than or next week? I mean, and so it just seems like you're throwing this out there like we missed an opportunity. As Bernie just said, we've talked about it for weeks. You still didn't commit on a map, and I don't know who you're waiting to hear from, or whether but the point is, the decision's been made, and unless you're saying you'll vote for it if we'll have another meeting, maybe we would come to another meeting if you'd vote for it, but you didn't vote for it, and you didn't even say you liked it. So, you know, that's all I got to say.
Other comments? Okay, so the motion is to have the meeting next week for the purpose of basically hearing from the public as far as what was decided today. Am I stating that correctly?
I think that's what I said. I think in discussion, it's also for the purpose of allowing each of us to explain how we approach this committee or any final thoughts we have, or as Drew said, to make the case for the map, that input can also then be on record for the commissioners to use as well.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion fails. I suppose after this discussion for the last half an hour or hour or so, would it be appropriate to actually move not to have our meeting next week? I look at Nick. I mean,
I think the majority is clear. I don't think we need to do that.
okay. All right, we won't. So at the end of each year, I write in a journal, you know, something I want to do in the future that stretches me, that something I normally wouldn't do, but feeling the need to try and expand myself. Facilitating this group was not on my list in January, but it's been fascinating. It's been educational. I know now more about Deschutes County and who's here and where they're located and all those sorts of things, communities of interest. So I've appreciated that. And all of you have caused me to think about things that normally I wouldn't think about. So I'll thank you for that. As I said in the beginning, I wouldn't have agreed to chair or facilitate this if all 3 commissioners didn't say, we want you to do it. So I guess I should thank them too, but I'll think about that later. But for you, I mean, this hasn't been easy. And we're creating something that really hasn't been done in the county before. In 2006, I don't think they spent the time or the effort that we've done and had the staff prepare information that has made our decision both clearer and also more challenging. So first of all, I'd like to thank the staff for all the time and effort that you've put in. And it'll be helpful, I think, to commissioners in the future because they've got this body of information. And then to the members yourself, I mean, you're, as you say, volunteers, some different point of views, agreeing on a lot of things. All of you wanted to do the best job possible. And so I want to thank you for your efforts and the time you've put into this. And I've met some new people I haven't met before, and that's always enjoyable. So with that, I think that, yes, Matt?
Yeah, I would just like to second your comments and certainly appreciate all the work the staff put in. Thank you.
Bernie?
Same for me. Thank you, staff.
And I know the other members feel the same way. So with that, we're adjourned, and Drew, have a great wedding. I know it's not your wedding, and return to Central Oregon safely without any air delays.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Neil. Thank you, everybody.
Enjoy Chicago.
Thank you. I will.